23 years of marriage ended when I found the photos. My wife wasn't at writing seminars. She was with him. I didn't confront her. I vanished. She came home to an empty house. 3 years later, she found me and begged on her knees. I said 3 words that destroyed her. My name is Dale Hoffman. I'm 44 years old, a civil engineer who builds bridges and highways. For 23 years, I thought I had a solid marriage. I met Diane when I was 21, fresh out of college. She was working at a bookstore, studying creative writing at night. We married 2 years later and built what I thought was a good life. We have 2 sons. Connor's 21, studying computer science at Penn State. Ryan's 19, playing baseball in Ohio. When the boys left for college, I figured Diane and I would finally reconnect. Maybe take that Italy trip we'd been planning. Instead, she found her writing group. It started innocently. Thursday night meetings at the library with other teachers and local writers. Diane came home energized, talking about plot structure and character development. I was happy for her. Then the seminars started. The first one was in March, up in the Poconos. A weekend retreat for serious writers, she said. She was practically vibrating with excitement. I helped her pack Friday morning, spent the weekend working on project proposals. She came home Sunday evening different. Brighter eyes, wider smile. Her whole demeanor shifted. At first, I thought it was creative inspiration. She talked vaguely about productive sessions, but when I asked to read what she'd written, she said it wasn't ready. The seminars became monthly, then twice a month. Each time, she'd leave Friday and return Sunday with that same distant glow. Our conversations grew shorter. She started keeping her phone face down. Little things that individually meant nothing, but together formed a troubling pattern. I'm an engineer. I solve problems by analyzing data. The pattern here was clear, but I kept telling myself I was paranoid. 23 years had earned her the benefit of the doubt. Right? Wrong. Everything changed one Friday, in September. Diane was packing for another seminar. I was in the garage, organizing tools, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Connor called, checking in from school. We talked about classes, normal father-son stuff. Then he asked how Mom was doing. Fine, I said. She's heading to another writing thing this weekend. Silence on the line. Dad, he said quietly, you know those aren't just writing seminars, right? My hand stopped moving. What are you talking about? Another pause. I think you need to pay closer attention. He wouldn't say more, but he didn't need to. My own son had just confirmed what I'd been trying not to believe. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for months. That night, after Diane left, I sat alone in our living room and made a decision. I needed the truth, whatever it was. And if my suspicions were right, the foundation of our marriage was already gone. I just didn't know it yet. After Connor's call, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through months of memories, piecing together moments I dismissed as nothing. The phone calls Diane took in another room. The new perfume. The way she'd started dressing differently for these seminars. Clothes she never wore around town. The distance in her eyes when she looked at me, like I was someone she used to know. By Monday morning, I made my decision. I needed proof. Not assumptions. Not gut feelings. Hard evidence. I spent my lunch break searching online for private investigators. I didn't want some big agency with flashy websites. I needed someone discreet, someone who'd been around long enough to know how to find the truth without making noise. That's when I found Jack Riley. His website was basic, just a phone number and a list of services. Surveillance, background checks, infidelity investigations. That last one made my chest tight. I called from my truck in the parking lot. A rough voice answered on the third ring. Riley. Yeah, hi, I said. I need to hire someone for a personal matter. You think your wife's cheating? It wasn't a question. I swallowed hard. I don't know, but something's not right. Meet me at Bernie's Diner on Route 22 tomorrow at noon, he said, and hung up. The next day, I sat across from Jack Riley in a worn booth at the back of the diner. He was maybe late 50s, leather jacket, tired eyes that had seen too much. He had a notebook and black coffee in front of him. Tell me everything, he said, flipping open the notebook. So I did. The writing seminars, the changes in Diane's behavior, the late nights, the guarded phone. How she'd come home from these weekends looking like someone who'd found something I couldn't give her. Jack listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his arms. All right, here's how this works. I follow her, track her movements, document everything. If there's something to find, I'll find it. And if there isn't? I asked. He shrugged. Then you'll know for sure. I handed him a recent photo of Diane and the details of her next seminar. She was heading to a place called Mountain View Lodge this coming weekend. Some 3-day intensive workshop. Jack slid the photo into his notebook. I'll be in touch. How much? I asked. He quoted a number that made me wince, but I didn't hesitate. Fine. One more thing, Jack said as I stood to leave. You sure you want to know? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I met his eyes. I'm sure. That Friday, Diane left the seminar bright and early. She was in a great mood, humming while she packed, practically bouncing on her feet. I helped carry her bag to the car, kissed her cheek, watched her drive away. My phone buzzed an hour later. A text from Jack. Got her. We'll update soon. The waiting was brutal. I tried working on project plans, fixing things around the house, anything to keep my mind occupied. Saturday evening, another text. Need to meet. Tomorrow, same place. Sunday afternoon, I sat in that same booth at Bernie's, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Jack slid in across from me and tossed a manila envelope on the table. Well, I asked. He sighed, rubbing his temple. You were right. I stared at the manila envelope like it was a live grenade. Jack sat across from me, patient, waiting. Finally, I opened it. The first photo showed Diane at the Mountain View Lodge registration desk. Normal enough. The second showed her in the lobby with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, dark hair, probably early 40s. They were standing close, too close. Her hand on his arm, his head tilted toward hers like they were sharing secrets. My throat tightened. His name's Colin Matthews, Jack said. 41, divorced. Teaches at a community college in Scranton. He's part of the writing workshop circuit. Been showing up at the same seminars as your wife for the past 6 months. I flipped to the next photo. Diane and Colin walking along a trail behind the lodge. Her head on his shoulder. His arm around her waist. They checked into the lodge separately. Jack continued. But they spent every minute together. Meals, workshops, walks. When the group sessions ended, they'd disappear. I followed them to a cabin about a mile up the road. My hand shook as I looked at the next picture. Diane and Colin on the porch of that cabin, kissing. Not a friendly peck. A real kiss, the kind that told a story I didn't want to read. How long were they there? I asked, my voice flat. 2 hours Friday night. 3 hours Saturday afternoon. Another 2 Saturday night. I closed the envelope and pushed it away. I'd seen enough. I'm sorry, Dale. Jack said quietly. I know this isn't what you wanted to find. Actually, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. It's exactly what I needed to find. Now I know. Jack nodded. What are you going to do? I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and counted out his fee plus extra. I'm going to handle it my way. Thanks for your work. He pocketed the cash and handed me the envelope. Evidence is all yours. You need anything else, you call me. I drove home in a daze, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a bomb. 23 years of marriage, 2 sons, a life we'd built together, and she'd thrown it all away for some community college teacher she met at a writing seminar. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the shock had burned away, replaced by something colder, clearer. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie, cry, or manipulate me into forgiving her. I was going to disappear, and by the time she figured out what was happening, it would be too late to stop me. Sunday night, Diane came home around 9. I was in the living room, ESPN on low volume, the envelope hidden in my truck. She dropped her bag by the door and walked in smiling. Hey, she said. How was your weekend? Quiet, I said, not looking up from the TV. How was the seminar? Amazing. Really productive. She sat on the arm of the couch. I think I finally figured out the structure for my novel. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Every word out of her mouth was a lie, and she delivered them so easily it made me sick. That's great, I said. I'm glad it's going well. She studied me for a second, like she was trying to read something in my expression. Then she shrugged and headed upstairs. I'm exhausted. I'm going to shower and crash. Sure, I said. The second I heard the water running, I went to my home office and closed the door. I had decisions to make, and I needed to make them fast. Confronting her would accomplish nothing. She'd cry, apologize, promise it meant nothing, beg for another chance. Maybe she'd even end it with Colin. But the trust was gone, and without trust, there was no marriage. So I wouldn't confront her. I'd leave. But leaving wasn't as simple as packing a bag. I had to protect myself financially, legally, emotionally. I needed a plan. Monday morning, I called my bank during lunch. I moved half our joint savings into my personal account. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger alerts, but enough to ensure I wouldn't be stranded. Then I opened a new account at a different bank entirely and started transferring money in small increments. Tuesday, I met with a lawyer. His office was in the next town over, far enough that word wouldn't get back to Diane. I laid out the situation, showed him the photos Jack had taken. The lawyer, a sharp guy named Paul Griffin, looked through the evidence and nodded. This is pretty clear-cut. Pennsylvania's a no-fault state. But this evidence will help if she tries to contest anything. I want it done fast, I said. No drama, no drawn-out battles. Just clean and final. Paul drafted divorce papers over the next 2 days. I signed them Thursday afternoon. Wednesday, I started looking for a new place. I found a small rental house on the south side of town through a buddy from work whose cousin owned properties. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, private, and available immediately. I signed a lease that evening. Thursday night, while Diane was at her writing group, I started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. Clothes, tools, important documents, photos of Connor and Ryan. I left most of the furniture, the decorations, all the stuff that didn't mean anything anymore. Friday morning, Diane left for another seminar. She kissed my cheek on her way out. "See you Sunday," she said. "Yeah," I said. "See you." I watched her drive away. Then I loaded the rest of my belongings into my truck and started erasing myself from her life. Saturday morning, I stood in my new rental house, surrounded by boxes and furniture I'd moved in undercover darkness. The place was bare but functional. A couch, a bed, my tools in the garage. Everything I needed, nothing I didn't. I spent the day setting up my new life. Changed my mailing address at the post office to a P.O. box. Called my boss, Frank, and explained I needed a transition to remote work for personal reasons. Frank and I had worked together for 12 years. He knew better than to ask questions. "You got it, Dale," he said. "We'll make it work. You need anything, you let me know." Next, I wiped my social media accounts. Facebook gone. LinkedIn deleted. I changed my email password, set up a new phone plan with a different number. I kept my old phone active just long enough to handle the transition, but by Sunday afternoon, it would be a dead line. The hardest part was calling Connor and Ryan. Connor answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad. What's up? I need to tell you something," I said, sitting on my new couch in my empty living room. "And I need you to listen without interrupting." Silence. Then, okay. I told him everything. The seminars, the private investigator, the photos of his mother with Colin Matthews. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to protect him from the truth. He was 21, a man, and he deserved to know what was happening to his family. When I finished, Connor was quiet for a long moment. I knew something was off. He finally said, his voice tight. "I just didn't want to believe it." "I know," I said, "but it's real, and I'm handling it. I'm leaving before she gets back tomorrow. By the time she walks through that door, I'll be gone." "Good," Connor said, surprising me with a hardness in his tone. "She doesn't deserve a chance to explain. I need you to do something for me," I said. "Don't tell her where I am. Don't give her my new number. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready, but I can't have her tracking me down." "Done," he said immediately. "What about Ryan? I'll call him next. But I need you both to understand this isn't about you. This is between me and your mother." "I get it, Dad. And for what it's worth, I'm on your side." The conversation with Ryan was harder. He was 19, more emotional, and the news hit him like a truck. He didn't say much, just listen while I explained. When I finished, his voice was shaking. "So you're just leaving? Just like that?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because staying would mean pretending everything's fine when it's not. I won't live like that." Ryan was quiet. Then, "Okay, I understand. You can call me anytime," I said. "I'm still your father. That doesn't change." "I know." Sunday morning, I made one final trip to the house. Diane wouldn't be home until evening, so I had time. I walked through the rooms one last time, making sure I hadn't left anything important behind. In the bedroom, I placed my wedding ring on the bathroom counter, where she'd see it immediately. Then I went to the kitchen table and set down the envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, signed and ready to file. On top, I placed one of Jack's photos, Diane and Colin kissing on that cabin porch. No note, no explanation. The picture said everything that needed saying. I locked the door behind me, tossed my old house keys in a storm drain 2 blocks away, and drove to my new place. By the time Diane got home, I'd be unreachable, untraceable, gone. Sunday evening, I sat in my new living room with a beer and my phone on silent. I'd blocked Diane's number hours ago, but I knew she'd try calling. Probably already had. I imagined her pulling into the driveway, noticing my truck wasn't there, walking into the house, calling my name. Silence. Then she'd see the missing clothes, the empty closet, the half-bare dresser. She'd walk through the house in disbelief, checking rooms like I might be hiding somewhere. Finally, she'd find an envelope on the kitchen table. I wondered what her face looked like when she opened it, when she saw the photo, when she realized I knew everything. My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I ignored it. It buzzed again 10 minutes later. Then again. I turned it off entirely. Monday morning, I drove to my lawyer's office and handed Paul the signed divorce papers. He filed them that afternoon. By Tuesday, Diane would be served. There'd be no avoiding it. No room for negotiation. You're sure about this? Paul asked. Once I file, it's official. File it, I said. That week, my phone, still off, filled up with voicemails I'd never listened to. I checked my email once and saw dozens of messages from Diane. Subject lines like, please call me, and we need to talk, and I can explain. I deleted them all without reading. Connor called my new number Wednesday evening. She's losing it, Dad. She called me crying, asking where you are. What did you tell her? I asked. Nothing. I told her I didn't know and hung up. Good man. She called Ryan too. He told her the same thing. She's desperate. Keeps saying it's all a misunderstanding. I laughed bitterly. There's no misunderstanding. She knows exactly what she did. Thursday, I started my first day of remote work. It was strange working from my kitchen table instead of the office, but Frank had made the transition seamless. My projects continued without interruption, and frankly, I preferred the solitude. Friday evening, Connor called again. Mom hired a private investigator to find you. I'd expected that. Let her try. I cover my tracks. She's also calling everyone we know. Aunts, uncles, your old college buddies. Nobody's telling her anything. Because nobody knows anything, I said. That's the point. Saturday, exactly 1 week after I'd left, I received an email from Paul. The divorce papers had been served. Diane had 30 days to respond. If she contested, we'd go to mediation. If not, the divorce would be finalized within 90 days. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. It was really happening. 23 years of marriage, ended with a signature and a filing fee. That night, I slept better than I had in months. I didn't need to be there to know what happened when Diane came home that Sunday evening. But Connor told me about it later, and the picture he painted was exactly what I'd imagined. She'd pulled in the driveway around 8:30, he said, still riding high from her weekend with Colin. She grabbed her bag from the trunk, humming some tune, probably already thinking about the next seminar. The house was dark when she unlocked the door, which probably struck her as odd. I usually left lights on. Dale, she called out, flipping the switch in the hallway. No answer. According to Connor, who'd driven down from school the next day to check on her, she'd wandered through the house, calling my name, growing more confused with each empty room. Then she'd noticed the gaps. My coat's missing from the closet. My boots gone from by the door. Half the dresser drawers empty. She must have stood in our bedroom, staring at the bare spaces, trying to make sense of it. Then she would have seen the wedding ring on the bathroom counter, sitting there like an accusation. That's when she probably started to panic. She came back from her seminar to an empty house, and I imagine that's when it hit her that something was terribly wrong. She would have grabbed her phone, dialed my number, straight to a disconnected message. She tried again. Same result. Then she'd gone downstairs and found the envelope on the kitchen table. Connor said when he arrived Monday afternoon, she was sitting at that table, the divorce papers spread out in front of her, the photo of her and Colin staring up at her. She'd been crying for hours, her face red and swollen, mascara streaked down her cheeks. He's gone, she told Connor. He just left. No warning, no conversation, nothing. Did you expect him to stick around? Connor had asked coldly. After what you did. She looked up at him, shocked. You know, Dad told me everything. He showed me the evidence. Connor, please, she begged. I need to talk to him. I need to explain. Explain what? That you've been sleeping with some guy from your writing group? That you've been lying to Dad for months? There's nothing to explain, Mom. You made your choice. She tried calling me through Connor's phone, through Ryan's, through mutual friends. Nobody would help her. I made sure of that. By Tuesday, she'd hired a private investigator to find me. By Wednesday, she was calling my workplace, my old college buddies, distant relatives. Nobody knew where I was, and the ones that did weren't talking. Thursday, she got served with the divorce papers officially. A process server showed up at the house while she was getting ready for work, handed her the documents, and left. According to the timeline Paul gave me, she'd sat on the porch steps and cried for an hour. Friday, she showed up at Connor's apartment in State College, a 3-hour drive, begging him to tell her where I was. Connor called me immediately. "She's here, Dad. She's a mess. Don't tell her anything," I said firmly. "I won't. But she's saying she'll do anything to fix this. She says she ended it with Colin, that it was a mistake, that she loves you." I laughed bitterly. She loves me? She's got a hell of a way of showing it. What do you want me to tell her? Tell her the truth. That she destroyed this marriage, and there's no going back. Tell her I'm done. Connor did exactly that. Diane left his apartment in tears. The following week, I got an email from Paul. Diane had hired a divorce attorney, some expensive lawyer from Philadelphia. They were contesting the terms, claiming I'd abandoned her, that I'd hidden assets, that the divorce should be delayed pending investigation. "She's grasping at straws," Paul said when I called him. "She has no case. The evidence is clear, your finances are clean, and you filed legally. This is just her way of trying to force contact with you." "How long will this drag on?" I asked. "A few months, maybe. But she can't win. Eventually, she'll have to accept it." I hung up and stared out my window. Diane was trying everything she could to pull me back in her orbit, but I wasn't budging. She'd made her bed with Colin Matthews, and now she could lie in it. Alone. 3 weeks after I left, Connor called with news. Colin dumped her. I was in my garage, working on a project for a client, and I nearly dropped my wrench. "What?" "Yeah," Connor said. "Apparently, once you filed for divorce and everything went public, Colin decided she was too much drama. He told her it was just supposed to be a fling, that he never planned on leaving his life for her." I sat down on my workbench, processing that. So she blew up her marriage for a guy who didn't even want her. Pretty much. Ryan talked to her last week. Felt bad for her. "She's a wreck, Dad. Lost weight, not sleeping, calling out of work. She keeps saying she made the biggest mistake of her life." "She did," I said flatly. "She's asking Ryan to beg you to reconsider. Says she'll do anything, go to therapy, whatever it takes." "No," I said immediately. "That bridge is burned, Connor. There's no rebuilding it. I figured. Just wanted you to know what's going on." A month later, Ryan called. He'd gone home for a weekend and found Diane in bad shape. The house was a disaster. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry everywhere. She'd stopped going to her writing group, stopped attending seminars, stopped writing entirely. "She just sits there, Dad," Ryan said, his voice heavy, staring at old photo albums, crying. "It's hard to watch." "I'm sorry you have to see that," I said. "But I can't fix her, Ryan. She has to fix herself." "I know. I just thought you should know." Part of me felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but maybe pity. Diane had thrown away 23 years for a fantasy that evaporated the moment reality hit. But that wasn't my problem anymore. 6 weeks after I left, Paul called with an update. Her lawyer withdrew from the case. Apparently, Diane can't afford the retainer anymore. She's going to have to represent herself, or accept your terms. What are the chances she accepts? I asked. "Hi." "She's got no leverage, no money for a prolonged fight, and no case. I'd say within the next 2 weeks, this will be finalized." He was right. 10 days later, Diane signed the divorce papers. No contest, no conditions. Paul sent me the final documents, and, just like that, it was over. I sat in my living room that evening, holding the paperwork, and felt nothing. No sadness, no relief, just a quiet sense of closure. The marriage was dead. The woman I'd loved for over 2 decades had killed it, and now we were both moving on. Except she wasn't moving on. Connor told me she'd started therapy, trying to work through what she'd done. She'd written me letters, actual handwritten letters, begging for a chance to apologize in person. I threw them away without reading them. Then, about 2 months post-divorce, she did something that surprised me. She published a novel. It was thinly veiled fiction, barely disguised as anything other than our story. A woman trapped in a stale marriage, seeking passion and creativity, finding it in the arms of another man. The book painted her as a victim of circumstance, a woman who'd made mistakes but deserved understanding. Connor sent me the link. "You need to see this, Dad." I read the summary and felt my jaw tighten. She was rewriting history, casting herself as the misunderstood protagonist and me as the cold, distant husband who'd driven her away. The book didn't sell well, a few hundred copies, maybe, but it was out there, her version of events immortalized in print. I called Paul. "Can I do anything about this?" "Not really," he said. "It's fiction, and she didn't use your real name. Legally, you don't have much recourse." So I let it go. Let her tell her story however she wanted. The people who mattered knew the truth. 3 months after the divorce, I started seeing someone new. Her name was Natalie, a project coordinator I'd met through work. She was smart, grounded, and honest. We took things slow, coffee dates turning into dinners, dinners turning into weekends together. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. 3 years passed faster than I expected. I settled into my new life with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Work kept me busy. I'd taken on larger projects, traveled to job sites across Pennsylvania and into neighboring states. The remote arrangement gave me flexibility, and I'd proven myself valuable enough that Frank eventually promoted me to senior project manager. Natalie and I had been together for most of those 3 years. We'd met through a mutual colleague about 4 months after my divorce finalized. She was 39, a project coordinator with a sharp mind and no tolerance for games. Our first coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends together, and, eventually, she moved into my place. What I appreciated most about Natalie was her honesty. She knew my history, knew what Diane had done, and she never pushed me to talk about it more than I wanted to. She understood that some wounds heal better when you stop picking at them. Connor had graduated from Penn State and landed a software engineering job in Pittsburgh. Ryan was finishing his senior year, already fielding offers for minor league baseball scouts. Both my sons had maintained minimal contact with their mother. Connor hadn't spoken to Diane in over a year. Ryan called her occasionally, more out of obligation than affection. "She asks about you every time," Ryan told me during one of our weekly calls. "Wants to know if you're seeing anyone, where you're living, how you're doing." "What do you tell her?" I asked. "That it's none of her business. I'd build a good life, a peaceful life. I had work I enjoyed, a woman who respected me, sons who'd become strong men despite their mother's choices. The past was exactly where it belonged, behind me." Then, on a Saturday afternoon in early October, everything collided. Natalie and I were at a coffee shop in downtown Harrisburg, a place we discovered a few months back that served excellent espresso and had a quiet atmosphere. We were sitting by the window, discussing plans for a weekend trip to the mountains, when I saw her. Diane. She was standing near the entrance, maybe 15 feet away, frozen like she'd seen a ghost. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, her face thinner. She looked older, worn down by 3 years of consequences. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Natalie noticed the change in my expression and turned to see what I was looking at. "Is that her?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. Diane took a hesitant step forward, then another. Her eyes flickered to Natalie, then back to me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out first. "Dale," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe it's really you." I didn't respond, just watched her approach, my face neutral. "I've been looking for you," she continued, her voice shaking. "For so long. I just want to talk, to explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said calmly. "You made your choices. I made mine. We're done." Her face twisted with emotion. "Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "No." She looked at Natalie, then back at me, desperation written all over her face. Then, to my shock and Natalie's clear discomfort, Diane dropped to her knees right there in the coffee shop. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong. I ruined everything. I destroyed our marriage, and I hate myself for it every single day. Please, just let me apologize properly. Let me try to make things right." The entire coffee shop had gone quiet. People were staring. The barista stood frozen behind the counter. Natalie shifted uncomfortably beside me. I looked down at Diane, kneeling on the floor, begging for forgiveness she'd never earned. 3 years later, she knelt before me, but I told her the same thing I would have told her 3 years ago. You made your choice when you decided Colin Matthews was more important than 23 years of marriage, I said coldly. Now live with it. Her sobs grew louder. I ended it with him. He left me. I was so stupid. That's not my problem, I interrupted. You're not my problem anymore. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and dropped cash on the table for our drinks. Then I looked at the barista, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. You might want to call someone, I said, gesturing to Diane. She needs to leave. Then I took Natalie's hand and walked out. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Natalie held my hand, gave me space to process what had just happened. When we got back to the house, she finally spoke. Are you okay? She asked. I sat down on the couch, exhaling slowly. Yeah, I'm fine. That was intense. It was pathetic, I said bluntly. She spent 3 years looking for me, and when she finally found me, all she could do was beg. Like that would change anything. Natalie sat beside me. Do you feel bad for her? I thought about that. Did I? Diane had lost everything. Her marriage, her family, her dignity. She bet it all on a fantasy that collapsed the moment reality showed up. And now she was alone, broken, desperate for a second chance that would never come. No, I said finally. I don't feel bad for her. She made her choices knowing what she was risking. The fact that it didn't work out the way she hoped doesn't make her a victim. It makes her accountable. Natalie nodded. Good, because you don't owe her anything. That night, Connor called. Word had spread fast. Diane had apparently called him, hysterical, telling him she'd seen me with another woman. She's losing it, Dad, Connor said. Says she's going to keep trying to reach you, that she won't give up. She can try all she wants, I said. I'm not engaging. If she shows up again, I'll get a restraining order. Good. You moved on. She should too. A week later, I got a certified letter from Diane's therapist. It was a request for me to participate in a session as part of Diane's healing process. The therapist explained that Diane needed closure, that speaking with me might help her move forward. I wrote back with a single sentence. My participation in her healing is not required or desired. 2 weeks after that, Paul called. Diane had tried to reopen the divorce case, claiming she'd signed under duress. The judge had dismissed it immediately. She's grasping at anything, Paul said. But she's got no legal standing. You're in the clear. Life returned to normal after that. Natalie and I took that trip to the mountains. Connor got promoted at his job. Ryan signed with a minor league team. I kept working, kept building, kept moving forward. Diane eventually stopped trying to contact me. According to Ryan, who still spoke to her occasionally, she'd moved to a smaller apartment, taken a different teaching position, and was trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Her novel had faded into obscurity. Her writing group had disbanded, and the seminars she'd once loved had become a source of shame she avoided. For months after our encounter at the coffee shop, Natalie and I got engaged. We married in a small ceremony the following spring, just close family and friends. Connor stood as my best man. Ryan gave a toast that brought the room to tears. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I'd build it on my terms, with people who valued honesty and loyalty. Diane had taken a wrecking ball to our marriage. But in doing so, she'd freed me to find something better. I never saw her again, never spoke to her again, and I was perfectly fine with that. Some betrayals don't deserve second chances. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Diane had learned that lesson the hard way, and I'd learned that walking away from something broken doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise.